My precious viewer, English language of primary 6. Our topic is hotels. Seed. Allow us to continue teaching you, dear children, much as you want. The reminder is COVID-19 is real. What do you need to do to remain safe? You need to observe the SOPs. When I talk about the SOPs, I mean the standard operating procedures. I urge you to wash your hands regularly. Sanitize, my precious viewer. Always endeavor to wear your mask appropriately and maintain the social distance that is recommended by our medical personnel. At this moment, allow me to take off my mask since I'm alone in the studio. My precious viewer, as I've already told you that we are going to look at the conditional clause 2. Before we go into that, allow me to remind you of what we learned in the last lesson on Tuesday. For those who watched it, for those who never watched that lesson, please pay maximum attention. In that lesson, we looked at conditional clause number 1. And I told you that in that conditional clause 1, we use it to express conditions that are meant to be fulfilled in order to attain a given result. Another thing you should remember is that in that conditional clause 1, we use the simple present tense in the if clause and the simple future tense in the main clause. I believe you should recall that. Another thing are the sentences we constructed in that lesson. Let me remind you a few of them. Number 1 was, if the chef prepares delicious meals, he will be paid highly. If the chef prepares delicious meals, he will be paid highly. In that sentence, you can hear that there is a condition that is meant to be fulfilled in order to attain a given result. My precious viewer, let me also remind you of another sentence we constructed in that lesson. That sentence was, if the baby cries, its mother will feed it. Putting that aside, my precious viewer, as I told you before that we are going to look at conditional clause number 2, there is something I want us to remind ourselves of because it's going to be very vital for us to understand this lesson. And that is none other than the simple, it is called the simple past. It is called the simple past tense. I want us to first remind ourselves of this tense before we go any further. I believe this tense is not new to you. You have ever looked at it in your primary 4, 3rd term under the topic time. What do I mean when I talk about the simple past tense, my precious viewer? You can get a pen and a book and you note where necessary. When I talk about the simple past tense, I mean the tense we use to express actions or events that took place or were performed in the past and are not related to the present. I repeat, when I talk about this tense, I mean the tense we use to express actions or events that took place or were performed in the past and they are not related to the present. I believe we've got that one clearly. What else do you need to know about this tense before we go further? You need to note that in this tense, we use the adverbs of time, like yesterday. We use adverbs of time like yesterday. I believe you are noting. Another adverb of time we use here is last week. Last week. Another one I can talk about, I can say last Tuesday, to mention but a few. All these adverbs of time are used in this tense and many others which I have not mentioned. My precious viewer, you also need to note critically that in this tense, we use verbs in their simple past form. I repeat, in this tense, we use verbs in their past simple form. Let me give you some examples so that you can clearly understand what I'm talking about. I have just told you that in this tense, we use the verbs in their simple past form. You are wondering which kind of verbs are those. Let me give you some example. For example, if you have the verb like a clean, and you would like to use it to construct a sentence in the simple past tense, what do you need to do, my precious viewer? You need to change this verb to its simple past form, which is cleaned. It is very simple to write the word cleaned. You just need to add letters ed. There you will have written your past simple form of the verb clean, which is cleaned. Another verb I can talk about is the verb dine. The verb dine. If at all you want to use this verb to construct any sentence in the simple past tense, you have to change it to dined. You need to change it to dined. In most cases, my precious viewer, you find problems with writing this verb in the present participle form, where you need to add the ing. Let me give you this. If you want to write this in the present participle form, you just need to eliminate that letter E, and you add the ing. I believe you've quoted that one too. Let's go on and I give you more examples. The next example I want to give you is the verb dirty. This is a verb. You have to note clearly that this word dirty is both a verb and an adjective. However, in this lesson, I'm using it as a verb. Therefore, in case you want to use this verb to express the simple past tense, what do you need to do? You need to change this verb to its simple past form, which is dirtied. Take a note of the spellings, which is dirtied. Note this clearly from me. Regular verbs that end in Y, like a dirty, like a carry, like a cry, in case you want to change them to their simple past form, what do you need to do, my precious viewer? You need to eliminate this Y, replace it with I, like the way I've just done, then you add, then you add ed. I believe you are following, my precious viewer. Another verb I can remind you of is the verb drink. If at all you want to use this verb in this tense, this verb has to be changed to its past or simple past form, which is drunk. Take a note of the spelling I'm talking about. When you're using this verb in the past form, it must be written in this way. It is D-R-A-N-K. That's the drunk we use in this tense, which I've just explained. My precious viewer, let me end with one more example, and that is the verb mop. If at all you want to use this verb mop in this tense, it will change to mopped. However, take a note of the spelling, my precious viewer. This verb, before adding letters ed, I have to double the last consonant. Remember, this verb is in the group where verbs double their last consonant before adding ed. There are also other verbs that behave like this one, like a clap, slap, to mention but a few. At this time, allow me to use some of these verbs to construct some sentences in the simple past tense. The first sentence I can construct is, she cleaned, I'm using this one now, she cleaned the compound very well last evening. She cleaned the compound very well last evening. In that sentence, I have used the verb clean in its simple past form because I want to talk about an activity that took place in the past. My precious viewer, I can also use the next verb in a sentence, and that verb is dine. I dined with my father last night. Another example I can give you is, Muwanguzi dirtied the dining table yesterday. Muwanguzi dirtied the dining table yesterday. Another sentence I can construct, let me use this time the verb mop. I can say, the pupils mopped in the classroom last Wednesday. The pupils mopped in the classroom last Wednesday. Take note of the way the sentence has been constructed. My precious viewer, you should always remember that we mop in the classroom, we mop in the house, but we don't mop the classroom, we don't mop the house. I believe you've learned that one. Having reminded ourselves, number two, however, before news for you. The good news is Google Play Store. Download the app known as the Prime Learn app. When you download that app, you will have access to very many lessons of very many subjects from nursery to primary 7. Therefore, download the app today and learn ahead of others. Don't you see that that is very beautiful? My precious viewer, back to our lesson as I promised. We are going to look at, before I write that, I'm talking about the Prime Learn app. Yeah, that's the app you download and you learn ahead of others. Back to our lesson, we are going to look at our conditional. I believe you are writing with me, my precious viewer. Conditional clause 2. Remember in the previous lesson, we looked at conditional clause 1. Now in this lesson, sit upright, pay maximum attention so that you can understand what's all about conditional clause 2. My precious viewer, this conditional clause 2 is used in 2 ways. However, we are going to handle one way at a time. The first way is, it is used, I believe you are noting down, it is used to express conditions that are possible but very unlikely to be fulfilled. Let me note that word. It is used to express conditions or situations that are very unlikely to be fulfilled. I believe you are following me, my precious viewer. The first way it is used, I'm stressing it so much so that as we move on, we move together. It is used to express actions, situations, conditions that are possible but very unlikely to be fulfilled. I believe you've quoted me right. Another thing you should note about this conditional clause 2, the speaker is imagining what would happen if the condition was fulfilled. In this conditional clause 2, the speaker is imagining what would happen if at all the condition was fulfilled. Unlike the conditional clause 1, where we use the simple present tense in the if clause and the simple future tense in the main clause, when it comes to this conditional clause 1, my precious viewer, this time we are going to be using the simple. We are going to use the simple past tense. The simple past tense. Where are we using it? In the if clause. We are going to be using the simple past tense in the if clause. I believe you are following. Then what will happen in the main clause? We shall use the past future. We are going to be using the past future in the main clause. I believe you are following, my precious viewer. Pay attention to this key learning principle. As we are writing sentences where we are going to ensure that we express our if clause in the simple past tense. Then we shall express the main clause in the past future. When I talk about the past future, don't get lost, my precious viewer. Here we are going to be using would or wouldn't. We are going to be using would or wouldn't where necessary. Now for you to get this one clearly, let's use the examples I have brought for you. Feel free to write as learning is going on, as well as paying maximum attention. Now my precious viewer, the first example says, remember we are going to be changing sentences from the conditional clause 1, which we all know by this time, to conditional clause 2. And our first example says, if you dirt, if you dirt the dining table, if you dirt the dining table, If you dot the dining table, don't forget a comma, my precious viewer. As I emphasized last time, whenever you begin with this conjunction if, a comma is a must. Don't forget that. If you dot the dining table, you will clean it. You will clean. You will clean it. That's our sentence in the conditional clause 1. What are we going to do? We are going to change this sentence from conditional clause 1 to conditional clause 2. Remember the guiding principle I've just given you. We are going to express this if clause in the simple past tense. Then the main clause will be expressed in the past future. Let us do it practically and we see how we are going to get our answer. First and foremost, my precious viewer watching me right now, whenever they ask you to change a sentence from conditional clause 1 to conditional clause 2, I request you to do the following. Identify the verb in the if clause. For example, what is our verb right now? In this sentence, the verb is dirty. What is the past form of this verb dirty? You've whispered it right. It is dirtied. The past form of the verb dirty is dirtied. What else do you need to know? Or to main clause. Identify the modal verb given. And the modal verb given to us is would. Then will. The modal verb given to us, I beg your pardon, correct sentence in the conditional clause 2. And our answer will be if you dirtied. If you dirtied the dining table. If you dirtied the dining table, take a note of the spelling of the word dining. If you dirtied the dining table, I believe you are following, you would clean it. Don't forget a full stop, my precious viewer. If you dirtied the dining table, you would clean it. Remember what I've just told you in this conditional clause 2. The speaker is imagining what would happen in case the condition was fulfilled. In this sentence, when you look at it, you also see that the speaker is imagining what would have happened in case that person dirtied the dining table. I believe you are wondering whether in this conditional clause 2, we only begin our sentences with if. No, dear. We can also use if within the sentence. If we want to use if within the sentence, what are we going to do? We are going to begin with the main clause. And we shall say that you would clean the dining table. You replace this pronoun it with the dining table. Note clearly that in case you are writing a sentence or two sentences having a noun and a pronoun, always give your first priority to a noun. Therefore, I cannot use it or a pronoun in the first sentence and I end with a noun. That would be wrong. Therefore, my answer will be, you would clean the dining table if you dirtied it. My precious viewer, let's now look at the next example. The next example says, example number 2, if I go to the hotel. If I go to the hotel, don't forget a comma, my precious viewer, whenever you begin your sentence with this conjunction, if. If I go to the hotel, I will use the cutlery. I will use the cutlery. I believe by this time when I talk about a cutlery, it's not a new word to you because we looked at it last Tuesday. But still I can repeat myself. A cutlery is a group, is a collective noun, which means a group of forks, spoons, and knives. If you have ever gone to the hotel, I believe when the waiters or the waitress completed serving you some food, they gave you fork, spoon, and knife. One word to mean all those 3 items that were given to you, it is the cutlery. I believe you've got it right. Let's continue and we change this sentence from conditional clause 1 to conditional clause 2. We are going to follow the same procedures we followed in the first example, my precious viewer. First and foremost, let's first identify the verb given to us in the if clause. I believe you've already seen that verb. That verb is go. The next question is, what is the past form of the verb go? The past form of the verb go, I know you've whispered it because you're a very brilliant viewer. The past form of the verb go is went. Then what else do we need to do? We need to look at our main clause and we identify the modal verb given to us. The modal verb given to us is will. Remember I told you that once you find will in the main clause and you are changing a sentence from conditional clause 1 to conditional clause 2, change this will to would. Having made all those changes, we are now ready to write our answer in conditional clause 2. And that answer of ours will be, if I went to the hotel. If I went to the hotel, don't forget a comma, my precious viewer. If I went to the hotel, I would use, I believe you are following, I would use the cutlery. I would use the cutlery. Don't forget the full stop. I'm so delighted that you are following. Therefore, let me even add you more examples. Let's look at the next example. Remember, the more examples I give, the better you understand the concept with me. If Moses, take a note of the one writing the name Moses. It is a proper noun. What does it mean? It must begin with a capital letter, just as a time. If Moses does not pay, pay attention to the word written, the word does not. There are two words. Once you combine both of them, your word will be wrong. If Moses does not pay the hotel bills, what will happen to Moses? He will be arrested. As I told you before, we have to ensure that we express the if clause in the simple past tense and the main clause in the past future. Therefore, my precious viewer, the advice I've given you is to first identify the verb given to you in the if clause. And that verb is the verb does not. What does this one change to in the past? Does not will become did not. Still write these two words separately. Write did alone and not alone. Go ahead and look what the main clause. Any modal verb given? Yes, there is one, and that is will. Change this will to would. After making all those changes, then rewrite your sentence in a conditional clause 2. And our answer will be, if Moses did not pay the hotel bills. If Moses did not pay the hotel bills, as hotel bill, because the one we have in our question, if Moses did not pay the hotel bill, he would be as I told you before. You can take time and look at my answer. When you look at this answer, you can remember what I've just told you. In this conditional clause 2, the speaker is imagining what would happen if at all the condition was fulfilled. Still, when you look at our answer, someone is imagining what would happen if at all Moses never paid the hotel bill. Let's go ahead, but before we continue, still we can use if within the sentence. How can we do it? We can do it by starting with the main clause. Let's do it and we see. I will say that Moses would be arrested. Moses would be arrested if he did not pay the hotel bills. Remember what I have just told you? You are not supposed to write a pronoun first and end with a noun. Always give the first priority to a noun. I believe you've got that one clearly. Let's go on and we'll look what the next example. The next example says, if we start the journey late, let me write it here. If we start the journey the journey late, if we start the journey late, we will not find the hotel. We will not find the hotel open. If we start the journey late, we will not find the hotel open. My precious viewer, when you look at this example, it's a little bit different from the examples I've been giving you. This time we have the word not in the main clause. But nevertheless, we are going to change this sentence to conditional clause 2, using the principles I've just given you. We have to express the if clause in the simple past tense. Then we shall express the main clause in the past future. As I've just told you, the first thing you should do, identify the verb given to you in the if clause, and that verb is start. What is the past form of this verb start? The past form of this verb start is started. I believe you are following me, my precious viewer. Then look at the main clause. Change it to would. However, don't tamper with the word not. Leave it there. Note this clearly, will not and would not. They are written as two separate words. Don't join them. Having made all those changes, my precious viewer, we can now answer our question as, if we started, my precious viewer, we would not find the hotel open. I believe you are following and you are learning greatly. My precious viewer, we can still do the same. We can use if within the sentence, however, not clearly. Once we use if within the sentence, we shall not need a comma at all. Therefore, if I try to use if here, I will have to say, we would not find the hotel open if we started the journey late. Let's look at our last example under this category. Our last example, my precious viewer, I believe you are writing. And last example says, if the waitresses, I believe you are writing, if the waitresses dress smartly, then